Okay, we have our template in place. We know we're trying to explain what's in the room of the natural universe by either offering an explanation from inside the room or an explanation from outside the room, just like we had in our death scene. And now we're going to move from the beginning of the universe in session 1. We're going to talk now about the fine-tuning of the universe. I had a case a number of years ago in which a woman was killed in her home, and she was asphyxiated by an overabundance of natural gas. And when it was reported, her mother visited her daughter and discovered, unfortunately, her daughter's death. And when she told us the story, there were several good layers of evidence that pointed to her ex-husband as a suspect. First of all, we had a foundational story about their marriage and the broken nature of their marriage. She had suffered some spousal abuse. He'd even threatened to kill her in the past. So we knew this was a possibility just from the foundational story of their relationship. But when we got to the house, we saw several other suspicious things at a regional level. For example, these were people who seldom locked their doors and seldom closed their windows on warm days. But when her mom got there, the victim's mom got there and saw that the windows were in fact not closed, they were closed and locked. Even when we went inside the actual house, we could see that at the bottom of the staircase, all the pocket doors have been closed to allow the gas to accumulate on the second floor where unfortunately this young lady died. So we had regional evidence that also kind of told us it looks like someone's been tampering with this place. At the local level of the room itself, we had a space heater, a heater on the wall where the pilot light had been extinguished so the gas could freely flow in, and somebody had stacked up a bunch of clothing against the closed door of the bedroom so no gas could escape through the room. Now think about that. We've got good evidence here at both the foundational level, the regional level, and the local level of the room itself to believe that we are in an environment that has been tampered with. This is not an accident. We now have an open homicide investigation based on 3 levels of evidence. Well, something similar happens in the universe. As we look at the universe, we see that it is fine-tuned at 3 levels for the appearance of carbon-based life like you and me. Carbon-based life that actually can think and observe the universe to determine that it's fine-tuned. Now you can see it at the foundational level, at the atomic level, the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, electromagnetism, the gravity, the force of gravity. These are so finely tuned that the smallest variation would create a universe that cannot even sustain itself, let alone sustain life. As a matter of fact, I'll give you an illustration of this. For gravity, the actual fine-tuning of gravity is so strictly constrained that if we had a tape measure and spanned the entire known universe, we just stretched it out from as far as we can see, as far as we know in either direction. That's a long tape measure. Well, if we just varied the force of gravity by 1 inch on that incredibly long tape measure, we would not have a universe right now that supports itself, let alone life. That's how finely tuned gravity is, and every other cosmological constant is equally fine-tuned. At the regional level, we have just the right galaxy and solar system that's fine-tuned to support life. Our galaxy is the right size, it's the right shape, it's the right distance from other galaxies. We are at the right position in the spiral arm of that galaxy. Our solar system, still at this regional level, is just the right size star, just the right composition, just the right mass, just the right heat. Even at the regional level of evidence here, we see fine-tuning. Not only that, at the local level of our planet, planet Earth, it's just the right size, just the right terrestrial depth of our crust of our planet to allow for the tectonic movement of plates, just the right atmospheric conditions. We happen to have a moon of the right size that is not so overbearing that it stops the rotation of Earth, but it allows the kinds of seasons we see in our planet, the kind of tides we see in our planet. All of this is fine-tuned, and altogether we see the same 3 levels of fine-tuning that you and I observed at that crime scene. We have enough reason to believe at the crime scene that the fine-tuning points to a fine-tuner who caused that death. And we can see the illustration. And here we see the illustration and we have just enough reason to believe from the fine-tuning we see in the universe that there's a fine-tuner that caused our life. So the fine-tuning in one location is very similar to the fine-tuning in another. So how do we explain the fine-tuning we see in the universe? The fine-tuning, by the way, is relatively non-controversial. Even atheists who don't believe in God's existence do agree that we see what appears to be fine-tuning in the universe. The only question is, how do we explain this fine-tuning? They would try to offer an explanation from inside the room. Well, there's maybe 3 or 4 good explanations that they tried to offer in the past, historically, to explain the fine-tuning. None of those actually work, and I've described some of these in your participants guide. But I want to talk about one that has kind of emerged as the most popular explanation, and that is this. If our universe is part of a larger collection of universes, if there is a multiverse in which there are perhaps an infinite number of universes, then why would we be surprised that one of these just happens to look like us? In fact, it's really a matter of just chance. Given enough opportunities, one might emerge just like ours. And so therefore, we don't need to resort to a fine-tuner outside the universe. We simply have a universe that by chance is perfectly tuned, perfectly designed. We didn't even say designed. It just by chance happens to support life. Okay, well, let's think about that for a second. First of all, I want to just tell you that this is a very controversial claim, the multiverse. Physicists don't even agree on this claim. They would argue, physicists who don't agree would argue there's not even good evidence scientifically to suggest we have a multiverse. It appears in many cases to be an inference based on fine-tuning. In other words, it's being offered simply to explain the fine-tuning. But we would ask, what is the physical evidence that demonstrates there's a multiverse? But even philosophically, I want you to think about this for a minute. If there are an infinite number of universes, and only a small percentage, 0.00000000001%, support organic life, support carbon-based life like ours, well, how many then support carbon-based life? An infinite number, because any fraction of an infinite would be an infinite collection. And if there are of those that support carbon-based life, 0.0000001% support life of humanoids like ours, well, how many of those are there? They have to be an infinite. And if of those 0.0000001% support life with humans who have the exact same personal history of all of you watching this right now, have the exact same personal history of everyone on our planet, including a person who's standing right now creating curriculum for a book, well, how many of those are there? An infinite number. Do you see the problem with this theory? This theory suggests that there is an infinite number of universes just like ours, behaving just like ours, with the same exact personal histories of humans just like ours. This is why the physicist Alan Guth thinks this idea is preposterous. And what he said is, this is so silly. If there is a multiverse, that means there is a universe right now where Elvis is still alive. For those of you who even know who Elvis was. What it means is small variations in all these universes. There's a universe in which I'm wearing a red shirt, a universe in which I'm wearing a yellow shirt. It becomes preposterous to lean on a theory for which we have no physical evidence that actually leads to logical inconsistencies like this infinite collection of identical universes. And that's why I think the better explanation is simply to point to a fine-tuner when we see fine-tuning. That's not such a radical idea, right? That perhaps there's a fine-tuner who has a goal in mind, a goal to create carbon-based humans just like us, who could then search through the stars, search through the galaxies to find the fine-tuner. This is yet another attribute of our suspect here as we look at the evidence in the crime scene. Remember, every crime scene provides us with evidence that actually describes the nature of our suspect. So far, we know that our suspect is all-powerful, non-spatial, non-temporal, non-material. Has he been eternal, is uncaused, first cause, who now has the ability to fine-tune a universe with a purpose in mind. A purpose that people like you and I would emerge and seek him. Now we're going to turn from cosmology to biology.